Hi there, my name's Lee Thurburn, and I'd like to welcome you to the China News Weekly Digest for the week ending November 6, 2022. We are going to have a very interesting news broadcast for you this week, but if you do like it, be sure and subscribe and, of course, hit the like button. And if I can answer any questions, be sure and post a comment in the comments section. Recently, I was thinking about the importance to China and to the United States, of course also to Taiwan, of the TSMC production facility in China, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Now, this is one of, if not the most advanced semiconductor manufacturing facility on the planet, and you know China would love to have it. And it's important to the United States as well because having the Chinese government not have access to those production capabilities means that it will become much more difficult for China to be able to develop advanced weaponry. And so in the event of a war, I was thinking, would the United States be inclined to damage the facility in some way, shape, or form? And while I was researching a variety of different things on the internet, I came across a statement from Chinese Communist Party economist Wen Ling, which she made in the 1st of June of 2022. So this statement made by Wen Ling was made before the United States imposed the semiconductor sales ban, the semiconductor manufacturing equipment sales ban, as well as banning U.S. citizen engineers from working for Chinese semiconductor manufacturing and assembly companies in China. Now that the ban has been enacted, it is having a significant impact on China. So I'm going to go ahead and start this, and I want you to listen. It's about 30 seconds. So here we go. Listen to what she has to say.
I think we must reclaim Taiwan, especially in terms of reconstructing the industrial chain, the supply chain. So we must take TSMC, which is a Chinese company, back to China, because it is now speeding up the transfer to the United States to build 6 plants in the United States. So we absolutely cannot let them realize all the transfer goals.
Wen Ling is an important economic policy contributor to the Chinese Communist Party's economic think tank. The importance of the TSMC facility to China's technological ambitions cannot be overstated. Well before China decides to attack Taiwan, the United States should make it clear to China that several things will happen in the event of an attack. First, the United States will provide support to Taiwan to counter the attack and any invasion that occurs. Second, the United States will help Taiwan move sensitive and advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment out of the TSMC facility to help protect it. And then finally, the United States will take all necessary measures to ensure that the TSMC facilities do not fall into the hands of the Chinese government, including potentially the destruction of the facilities and any equipment that may not have yet been relocated. Now, I bring this up because, again, I believe that China is planning an attack on Taiwan much earlier than most people think. Most military planners look at the year 2027 as the most likely year. However, I think that they are not considering all of the pressures that the Chinese government is under when they think that far into the future. Now, recently, Canada ordered 3 different Chinese companies to sell their interest in lithium mining operations that they had in China. Canada joined with the United States, the United Kingdom, and several other countries to help ensure that the supply of critical minerals, such as lithium, could be secured because of the demands and the importance that they represent in a variety of industries. Canadian investigators determined that significant securities risks related to Chinese government control over the three companies that made those continuing investments imprudent. Dupont de Nemours, recently announced that they planned to terminate their acquisition of Rogers Corp, which is a Chinese chemical company, due to the indications they were receiving from Chinese regulators that the regulators would not permit the deal to be finalized. This raises concerns that other similar deals will become a casualty of the escalating tensions between the United States and China over China's ever more aggressive statements and stance and policies towards Taiwan. Domestic share buyers have recently stepped in China because the Hong Kong Hang Seng stock market index plunged 15% in October due to investor concerns over the results of the Chinese Communist Party's 20th Congress. There were concerns that the Chinese Communist Party would be willing to make the trade between economic growth for the nation and a leveling of income inequality in China. So as foreign investors and the funds they manage sold off their holdings, domestic investors have begun to step in to take advantage of what they perceive as bargains. The 20th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party concluded, as you know, and as a result, I mentioned that it would be very likely that we would see a rush to the exits among the wealthy people in China. So the wealthy in China are, in fact, running for the exits, as their concerns over the direction China is taking has become undeniably apparent, even to those most optimistic entrepreneurs and business leaders in China. Western attorneys are reporting a resurgence of activity as affluent, concerned private and public officials take steps to move both their family and their wealth out of China. Most of these are avoiding the United States as a destination because they're concerned that the United States may garnish their assets when a conflict between China and the United States escalates. I have posted a link to a YouTube video by China Insights, and China Insights reported recently that China has begun preparing for more aggressive central planning for the economy, and it's evidenced by the establishment of a large number of cooperatives for the production and distribution of products and credit. This is a policy that was in place in the final years of the Mao Zedong government and is generally viewed as not very effective. There is talk about also China issuing a new currency, which would require that citizens exchange their holdings of old currency, otherwise it might expire and become worthless. Now, billions and billions of yuan are literally stuffed in mattresses and cans that are saved by people because they don't trust the Chinese government to put their money in the central bank. As you no doubt are aware, there have recently been significant bank runs and riots as people try to get a hold of their money that was locked into the banks, and they were denied access to their funds by the Chinese Communist Party. So a policy that would produce a new currency and time out or sunset the old currency would literally force the Chinese people to pull their old currency out and exchange it for new currency, which would then give the Chinese government the ability to pump that currency back into the economy. These are the kinds of desperate moves that countries make when their policies are failing. British International Trade Minister Greg Hand is visiting Taiwan this coming week for trade talks with President Tsai Ing-wen. Apple has decided to shift iPhone production from China to India as China's COVID lockdown policies prevent reliable production scheduling from the Foxconn facility in China. And China has threatened the Swiss government this last week that if they impose sanctions, there will be problems, as the Swiss government is contemplating imposing sanctions to be in sync with other European Union countries. China issued a response to Canada, which opposes the order to divest equity positions in Canadian lithium mining companies, and we can expect to see those that response, that opposing, work through the Canadian courts before any additional actions might be taken. You can see that China is beginning to feel the circling of the wagons, if you will, of other nations as they realize that they have to be synchronized in the response to China. This is also evidenced this week by G7 representatives issuing a warning to China to not consider using force to reunify Taiwan. Anthony Blinken, speaking on behalf of the G7 group, stated that the G7 are clear-eyed on their alignment to oppose the use of force by China. And in related news, Japan expressed plans to accelerate cooperation with both the United Kingdom and Australia and the United States in preparing for war with China. Recent military exercises that included Japan, the United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States, as well as South Korea, signaled renewed cooperation among the parties in light of both Chinese as well as North Korean military spending increases have occurred in recent years. Last week, I mentioned that you could expect to see a rush for the exits as Chinese wealthy business owners and others accelerated their plans to move money and family members out of China. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that you could expect China to divert U.S. military attention from an impending attack on Taiwan by encouraging increased activity military activity on behalf of both North Korea and Iran. Now, I do not imply that I think an attack on Taiwan is imminent. However, I think that it's likely that North Korea and possibly Iran must be watched because they certainly heed the wishes of Chinese Communist Party ministers. One of the best ways to feint is to feint so often that your adversary loses their edge and when you decide to actually make your move. Now, I think that you should look at the way that China has ramped up their military exercises in the Taiwan Strait, as well as around China, as a way of desensitizing China and the United States from what may in fact be an actual aggression on behalf of China. The same exact strategy is one that I look to see happening on behalf of both North Korea and Iran. Increased bluster, military exercises and movements, all in an attempt to desensitize the United States, Japan, and the other countries that are helping to establish a protection field, a buffer, if you will, of security for Taiwan. So look for these kinds of actions to increase in the future. Thank you for watching the Chinese News Weekly Digest, and if you like it, please be sure to subscribe. I'll see you again next week with a recap of the week's news.